Question 1. To address the challenge of demonstrating genuine interest and suitability for admission to the African Methodist Episcopal University, which of the following approaches would best reflect a prospective student's commitment to academic excellence and alignment with the university's ethos? Option A. Articulating a personal vision for academic and personal development that is grounded in a genuine interest in the university's specific offerings and ethos. Option B. Focusing on the perceived prestige of the university and the career advancement opportunities it offers, without specific reference to its unique mission. Option C. Detailing past academic struggles and personal weaknesses as the primary focus of the application narrative. Option D. Expressing a desire to fit in with the university community and conform to what is perceived as expected of students. The correct answer is A. Articulating a personal vision for academic and personal development that is grounded in a genuine interest in the university's specific offerings and ethos. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the foundational principles and ethical considerations relevant to pursuing higher education within the specific context of the African Methodist Episcopal University. The challenge lies in discerning which approach best reflects a commitment to academic integrity, respect for institutional values, and a genuine desire for personal and intellectual growth, all within the framework of what is expected of prospective students at this particular institution. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that aligns with the university's mission and the ethical standards expected of its community. The correct approach involves articulating a personal vision for academic and personal development that is grounded in a genuine interest in the university's specific offerings and ethos. This approach is right because it demonstrates foresight, a proactive engagement with the university's mission, and a commitment to contributing positively to the academic community. It reflects an understanding that university entrance is not merely about acquiring a degree, but about becoming part of an intellectual and ethical tradition. This aligns with the implicit expectations of any reputable educational institution, including the African Methodist Episcopal University, which seeks students who will uphold its values and contribute to its legacy. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the perceived prestige or career advancement opportunities, without demonstrating an understanding of the university's unique character or a commitment to its values, fails to meet the ethical standard of genuine interest and intellectual curiosity. This approach is professionally unacceptable because it suggests a transactional view of education, rather than a commitment to learning and personal growth. It may also be seen as disingenuous, as it prioritizes external benefits over the intrinsic value of education and the specific contributions the applicant intends to make to the university community. Another incorrect approach that emphasizes a desire to simply fit in or conform to perceived expectations without articulating a personal vision or specific interests demonstrates a lack of self-awareness and initiative. This approach is professionally unacceptable, as it suggests an applicant who is not prepared to engage critically with their studies or contribute meaningfully to the university's intellectual discourse. It fails to showcase the unique qualities and aspirations that would make the applicant a valuable member of the university. A further incorrect approach that centers on overcoming personal weaknesses or past academic struggles without framing them as learning experiences or demonstrating a clear plan for future success lacks the necessary forward-looking perspective. While acknowledging challenges can be part of a personal narrative, the primary focus for university entrance should be on future potential and commitment. This approach is professionally unacceptable because it may inadvertently highlight a lack of preparedness or a deficit in proactive problem solving, rather than showcasing the applicant's readiness for the rigors of university study and their potential for growth. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves introspection to understand one's genuine motivations for seeking admission, researching the institution's mission, values, and academic programs thoroughly, and then articulating a vision that demonstrates a clear alignment between personal goals and the university's offerings. It requires honesty, self-awareness, and a proactive approach to showcasing one's potential to contribute positively to the academic community. Question 2. The review process indicates a potential risk associated with an applicant's academic profile, prompting a discussion among the admissions committee regarding how to proceed with their evaluation. Option A. Automatically assign a lower priority to this applicant's file due to the historical performance trends of their high school. Option B. Immediately flag the applicant for further investigation based on their residential address, assuming potential challenges. Option C. Seek informal opinions from individuals in the applicant's community to gauge their character and academic aptitude. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive review of the applicant's entire application, including essays, extracurricular activities, and any supplemental materials, to gain a holistic understanding of their potential and readiness for university. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive review of the applicant's entire application, including essays, extracurricular activities, and any supplemental materials, to gain a holistic understanding of their potential and readiness for university. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to provide a fair and transparent admissions process. The admissions committee must assess risk without resorting to discriminatory practices or making assumptions based on limited information. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the assessment is objective, evidence-based, and aligns with the ethical principles of fairness and equity. The correct approach involves a holistic review of the applicant's profile, considering a range of factors beyond a single data point. This approach acknowledges that academic potential can be demonstrated in various ways, and that standardized metrics may not capture the full picture of an applicant's readiness for university-level study. This aligns with the ethical imperative to treat all applicants equitably and to provide opportunities based on merit and potential, rather than on assumptions or biases. It also reflects a commitment to diversity and inclusion, recognizing that students from different backgrounds may present unique strengths. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the applicant's high school's historical performance would be ethically flawed because it unfairly penalizes current applicants based on the past performance of others, without considering the individual's own merits. This approach risks perpetuating systemic disadvantages and overlooks the possibility of individual growth and improvement. It also fails to adhere to the principle of individual assessment, which is fundamental to fair evaluation. Another incorrect approach that involves immediately flagging the applicant for additional scrutiny based on their neighborhood of residence is discriminatory and unethical. This practice relies on socioeconomic stereotypes and can lead to unfair bias against applicants from certain areas, regardless of their academic qualifications or personal circumstances. It violates the principle of equal opportunity and can create barriers for deserving students. A further incorrect approach that involves seeking informal recommendations from individuals within the applicant's community without a structured process is also problematic. This can lead to subjective and potentially biased evaluations that are not based on objective criteria. It undermines the integrity of the admissions process by introducing personal opinions and relationships that may not be relevant to academic suitability. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear, documented admissions policy that outlines the criteria for evaluation and the steps involved in the review process. Admissions committees should be trained on fair and unbiased assessment techniques. When potential risks are identified, the process should involve gathering objective evidence to support any concerns, rather than relying on assumptions or stereotypes. The focus should always be on assessing the individual applicant's potential and suitability for the university's programs. Question 3. What factors determine the most effective approach to conducting a comprehensive risk assessment for an academic institution like the African Methodist Episcopal University? Option A. An exclusive consideration of external threats and market fluctuations. Option B. A primary focus on immediate financial risks and potential revenue losses. Option C. A systematic identification of potential threats across all operational areas, an analysis of their likelihood and potential impact, and the development of proactive mitigation strategies. Option D. A reactive approach that addresses risks only after they have materialized. The correct answer is C. A systematic identification of potential threats across all operational areas, an analysis of their likelihood and potential impact, and the development of proactive mitigation strategies. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the foundational principles of risk assessment as applied within an academic institution, specifically the African Methodist Episcopal University. The challenge lies in identifying the most comprehensive and ethically sound approach to evaluating potential risks that could impact the university's operations, reputation, and the well-being of its community. A superficial understanding of risk assessment is insufficient. Applicants must grasp the interconnectedness of various risk categories and the importance of a structured, proactive methodology. The correct approach involves a systematic identification of potential threats, an analysis of their likelihood and impact, and the development of mitigation strategies. This aligns with best practices in institutional risk management, which emphasize a holistic view. For an academic institution like the African Methodist Episcopal University, this means considering not only financial or operational risks, but also academic integrity, student welfare, community relations, and adherence to its specific mission and values. Regulatory frameworks, while not explicitly detailed for this exam's jurisdiction in a way that dictates specific risk categories, implicitly require institutions to operate responsibly and sustainably, which necessitates robust risk management. Ethically, this approach demonstrates a commitment to safeguarding the university's assets, its people, and its educational mission. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate financial implications fails to recognize the broader spectrum of risks that can jeopardize an institution's long-term viability and reputation. This overlooks critical areas such as reputational damage from academic misconduct or student safety issues, which can have far more devastating consequences than short-term financial losses. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes only external threats neglects internal vulnerabilities, such as inadequate governance or operational inefficiencies, which can be equally, if not more, damaging. Failing to consider both internal and external factors presents an incomplete and therefore ineffective risk assessment. An approach that relies on reactive measures rather than proactive identification and mitigation is also flawed, as it suggests a lack of foresight and preparedness, potentially leading to crises rather than preventing them. This reactive stance is antithetical to responsible institutional stewardship. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the specific context of the institution. In this case, the African Methodist Episcopal University's unique mission, values, and operational environment. This involves a comprehensive risk identification process that considers all potential categories of risk: strategic, operational, financial, compliance, reputational, etc. Following identification, a thorough analysis of likelihood and impact should be conducted, leading to the prioritization of risks. Finally, the development and implementation of appropriate mitigation strategies, coupled with ongoing monitoring and review, form the complete risk management cycle. This structured, proactive, and comprehensive approach ensures that potential threats are addressed effectively, safeguarding the institution. Question 4. The monitoring system demonstrates an unusual pattern in applicant engagement during the recent African Methodist Episcopal University entrance examination, suggesting a potential for procedural irregularities. Which of the following represents the most appropriate risk assessment approach for the admissions committee? Option A. Disregard the monitoring system's findings as potentially erroneous and proceed with the examination, results as initially calculated. Option B. Immediately disqualify all applicants whose engagement patterns triggered the monitoring system's alert, citing a breach of examination integrity. Option C. Conduct a general review of the monitoring system's functionality to ensure it is operating correctly, without investigating individual applicant data at this stage. Option D. Initiate a review of the specific applicant data flagged by the system, cross-referencing with university admission policies to determine if any breaches have occurred, and if so, proceed with the established disciplinary procedures. The correct answer is D. Initiate a review of the specific applicant data flagged by the system, cross-referencing with university admission policies to determine if any breaches have occurred, and if so, proceed with the established disciplinary procedures. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires the applicant to interpret data from a monitoring system and apply it to a risk assessment context, specifically within the framework of the African Methodist Episcopal University's entrance examination guidelines. The challenge lies in discerning the most appropriate response to potential anomalies without resorting to purely mathematical solutions, emphasizing conceptual understanding of risk and its management as relevant to an academic admissions process. Careful judgment is required to balance the need for thoroughness with the practical constraints of an entrance examination. The correct approach involves identifying potential risks indicated by the monitoring system and proposing a systematic, policy-aligned method for further investigation and mitigation. This aligns with the principles of responsible data interpretation and risk management, which are implicitly expected in any institutional process, including university admissions. The African Methodist Episcopal University, like any academic institution, would prioritize fairness, integrity, and adherence to its own established procedures. Therefore, a response that suggests a measured, investigative approach, grounded in the university's existing policies for handling irregularities, represents best professional practice. This approach respects the data while ensuring that any actions taken are procedurally sound and ethically defensible within the university's governance structure. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate punitive action without investigation fails to uphold principles of due process and fairness. It bypasses the necessary steps to confirm the nature and extent of any anomaly, potentially leading to unjust outcomes for applicants. This would be a regulatory failure, as it disregards established university protocols for handling admissions-related issues. Another incorrect approach that suggests ignoring the monitoring system's findings would be an ethical and potentially regulatory failure. It implies a lack of diligence and a disregard for the integrity of the admissions process. Universities have a responsibility to maintain the credibility of their entrance examinations, and ignoring potential indicators of risk would undermine this responsibility. A third incorrect approach that proposes a generic, nonspecific response without reference to university policy or a clear investigative path demonstrates a lack of understanding of institutional procedures. While acknowledging the data, it fails to provide a practical or actionable solution that would be acceptable within the context of a university's operational framework. This indicates a deficiency in applying theoretical knowledge to a practical institutional setting. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves 1. Understanding the context and the specific regulatory framework, in this case, the African Methodist Episcopal University's entrance exam guidelines. 2. Analyzing the information presented, the monitoring system's demonstration. 3. Identifying potential risks and their implications. 4. Proposing a course of action that is both effective and compliant with established policies and ethical standards. 5. Prioritizing fairness, integrity, and due process in all decisions. Question 5. Market research demonstrates a significant opportunity for the African Methodist Episcopal University to expand its online course offerings into new international markets, potentially increasing enrollment and revenue. However, this expansion involves navigating diverse cultural contexts, varying technological infrastructures, and potentially different educational accreditation standards. Which approach best addresses the inherent risks associated with this strategic initiative? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment, identifying potential challenges in cultural adaptation, technological compatibility, and accreditation compliance, and develop proactive mitigation strategies before committing significant resources. Option B. Focus exclusively on the projected revenue increases, allocating resources to marketing and content development while minimizing internal discussions about potential operational or regulatory hurdles. Option C. Prioritize securing external partnerships with international educational consultants to guide the expansion, deferring internal risk evaluation until after initial market entry. Option D. Immediately launch pilot programs in selected markets based on the positive market research, assuming that any challenges encountered can be addressed reactively. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment, identifying potential challenges in cultural adaptation, technological compatibility, and accreditation compliance, and develop proactive mitigation strategies before committing significant resources. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to balance the potential for growth and innovation with the imperative to adhere to established ethical guidelines and university policies. The pressure to achieve ambitious goals, as indicated by market research, can sometimes lead to overlooking or downplaying potential risks. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any proposed initiatives are not only commercially viable, but also align with the university's mission, values, and regulatory obligations, particularly concerning responsible innovation and resource allocation. The correct approach involves a thorough and systematic risk assessment process. This entails identifying potential risks associated with the proposed expansion, evaluating their likelihood and impact, and developing mitigation strategies. This approach is professionally sound because it is proactive, evidence-based, and aligns with principles of good governance and responsible decision-making. Specifically, it adheres to the implicit regulatory framework governing university operations, which prioritizes prudent management of resources, ethical conduct, and safeguarding the institution's reputation. A structured risk assessment ensures that decisions are informed by a comprehensive understanding of potential downsides, thereby protecting the university from unforeseen negative consequences and ensuring that any expansion is sustainable and aligned with its strategic objectives. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the potential financial gains without a commensurate evaluation of risks fails to uphold the university's fiduciary responsibilities. This approach is ethically flawed as it prioritizes short-term benefits over long-term institutional stability and reputation. Another incorrect approach that involves immediate implementation based on preliminary positive indicators, without a formal risk assessment, demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for established institutional procedures. This can lead to significant financial losses, reputational damage, or even legal repercussions if the expansion violates any undisclosed regulations or ethical standards. A third incorrect approach that involves seeking external validation without an internal risk assessment process is also problematic. While external input is valuable, it should supplement, not replace, a robust internal evaluation of risks and alignment with the university's specific context and regulatory environment. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the objectives, followed by a comprehensive identification and analysis of potential risks. This should include consulting relevant university policies, ethical guidelines, and any applicable external regulations. The next step involves evaluating the feasibility and desirability of mitigation strategies. Finally, decisions should be made based on a balanced consideration of potential benefits and risks, ensuring alignment with the institution's overall mission and values. Question 6. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a security breach during the upcoming African Methodist Episcopal University entrance exam, with a high potential impact on the university's reputation and the integrity of its admissions process. Which of the following actions best reflects a responsible and compliant approach to managing this identified risk? Option A. Postponing the exam indefinitely until a perfect, zero-risk security solution can be identified and implemented. Option B. Focusing solely on public relations efforts to manage any potential negative fallout without addressing the underlying security vulnerabilities. Option C. Relying on the existing security measures, assuming the likelihood of a breach is low enough to not warrant additional expenditure or disruption. Option D. Implementing enhanced proctoring protocols, including increased surveillance and stricter identification verification, and conducting a thorough review of the exam's digital security infrastructure. The correct answer is D. Implementing enhanced proctoring protocols, including increased surveillance and stricter identification verification, and conducting a thorough review of the exam's digital security infrastructure. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity and student success with the practical realities of resource allocation and potential reputational damage. A risk assessment, particularly one presented visually through a risk matrix, necessitates a nuanced understanding of potential threats and the development of appropriate mitigation strategies. The African Methodist Episcopal University entrance exam, as a gateway to higher education, carries significant weight in shaping the institution's future student body and its standing within the community. Therefore, decisions made based on a risk assessment must be grounded in established ethical principles and the university's own regulatory framework, which would likely include policies on admissions, academic standards, and institutional integrity. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of the identified risks, considering both their likelihood and potential impact, and then prioritizing mitigation efforts based on this assessment. This aligns with best professional practice by ensuring that resources are directed towards the most critical vulnerabilities. Specifically, for an entrance exam, this would involve evaluating the risk of compromised exam security, the potential for unqualified candidates to gain admission, and the impact on the university's academic reputation. The regulatory justification stems from the university's obligation to maintain fair and equitable admissions processes, uphold academic standards, and act in a manner that preserves its institutional integrity. Ethically, this approach demonstrates a commitment to transparency, fairness, and responsible stewardship of the university's resources and reputation. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss potential risks without thorough investigation, especially if they are perceived as inconvenient or costly to address. This fails to meet the regulatory requirement of due diligence in admissions processes and violates the ethical principle of acting with prudence and foresight. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on the financial cost of mitigation without adequately considering the potential impact on academic quality or institutional reputation. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the broader responsibilities of an educational institution and can lead to significant long-term damage. A third incorrect approach is to implement mitigation strategies that are overly burdensome or discriminatory, potentially excluding deserving candidates without a clear justification based on the actual risks identified. This would violate principles of fairness and equal opportunity and could lead to regulatory scrutiny and reputational harm. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach to risk management. This begins with identifying potential risks, followed by analyzing their likelihood and impact. Once assessed, appropriate mitigation strategies should be developed and prioritized. Crucially, these strategies must be evaluated against the university's established policies, ethical guidelines, and regulatory obligations. Continuous monitoring and review of the effectiveness of mitigation measures are also essential to ensure ongoing compliance and to adapt to evolving circumstances. Question 7. The control framework reveals potential vulnerabilities in the African Methodist Episcopal University's undergraduate admissions process, specifically concerning the verification of applicant credentials and the integrity of submitted academic records. Considering the university's commitment to academic excellence and ethical admissions, which of the following approaches best addresses these identified risks? Option A. Establish a dedicated admissions review committee to conduct in-depth interviews with a select group of applicants exhibiting unusual application patterns, while relying on automated checks for the majority. Option B. Implement a multi-stage verification process for all submitted academic transcripts and require standardized testing for all applicants, regardless of prior academic history, to ensure a uniform baseline of assessment. Option C. Increase the minimum GPA requirement for all programs and implement a strict policy of immediate rejection for any application containing even minor discrepancies in submitted information. Option D. Develop and implement a comprehensive risk assessment matrix for the admissions process, identifying potential threats, evaluating their impact and likelihood, and designing targeted control measures for high-risk areas, including random audits of submitted documents. The correct answer is B. Implement a multi-stage verification process for all submitted academic transcripts and require standardized testing for all applicants, regardless of prior academic history, to ensure a uniform baseline of assessment. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to address potential risks to its reputation and operational efficiency. The admission process, as a critical gateway, is susceptible to various forms of risk, including fraudulent applications, misrepresentation of qualifications, and potential security breaches. A robust control framework is essential to mitigate these risks, ensuring that only qualified and legitimate candidates are admitted, thereby upholding the university's standards and public trust. The challenge lies in implementing controls that are effective without being overly burdensome or creating unnecessary barriers for genuine applicants. The correct approach involves a systematic and proactive risk assessment process. This entails identifying potential risks associated with the admissions process, evaluating their likelihood and impact, and then developing and implementing appropriate control measures. This approach is aligned with best practices in institutional governance and risk management, emphasizing a forward-looking strategy to prevent issues rather than reacting to them. Specifically, within the context of university admissions, this would involve scrutinizing application documents, verifying credentials, and establishing clear protocols for handling discrepancies or suspicious activity. This proactive stance is ethically sound as it protects the integrity of the academic institution and ensures fairness to all applicants. An incorrect approach would be to ignore potential risks or to implement controls reactively. For instance, solely relying on self-reported information without any verification process would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This creates a high risk of admitting unqualified individuals, which undermines the academic rigor of the university and could lead to reputational damage. Another incorrect approach would be to implement overly stringent and arbitrary checks that disproportionately disadvantage legitimate applicants, potentially violating principles of fairness and equal opportunity. Such measures, while seemingly addressing risk, could be seen as discriminatory or excessively bureaucratic, failing to uphold the university's commitment to accessibility and inclusivity. A reactive approach, such as only investigating issues after they have been identified as problems, is also flawed as it allows risks to materialize, causing potential harm before any action is taken. Professionals in university administration should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes a comprehensive understanding of the admissions process and its inherent risks. This involves regular review and updating of the control framework based on emerging threats and best practices. It requires a commitment to ethical conduct, ensuring that all decisions are fair, transparent, and in the best interest of the institution and its stakeholders. A balanced approach that combines robust risk assessment with efficient and fair implementation of controls is paramount. Question 8. The assessment process reveals an applicant's academic transcript shows a significant dip in grades during their final year of secondary education, followed by a period of enrollment in a less academically rigorous program at a vocational institution before applying to African Methodist Episcopal University. What is the most appropriate approach to assess this applicant's risk profile for admission? Option A. Immediately flag the applicant as high risk due to the inconsistent academic performance and the vocational program, assuming they may not meet the university's academic standards. Option B. Prioritize the applicant's performance in the vocational program, assuming it is a more accurate reflection of their current capabilities than their secondary education grades. Option C. Focus solely on the grades from the secondary education period, disregarding the vocational program as irrelevant to their university readiness. Option D. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's entire academic history, seeking context for the grade dip and vocational program performance, and consider their personal statement and any supporting documentation to gauge their potential for success at African Methodist Episcopal University. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's entire academic history, seeking context for the grade dip and vocational program performance, and consider their personal statement and any supporting documentation to gauge their potential for success at African Methodist Episcopal University. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a scenario where an applicant's academic history presents potential risks to the university's academic integrity and admission standards. This situation is professionally challenging because it requires a delicate balance between fairness to the applicant and upholding the university's commitment to admitting qualified students who can succeed in its academic programs. A thorough risk assessment is crucial to identify potential issues without resorting to prejudice or making assumptions. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of the applicant's academic record, focusing on understanding the context of any perceived discrepancies or underperformance. This includes examining the rigor of previous institutions, the nature of any challenging circumstances the applicant may have faced, and the applicant's own explanations for their academic performance. This approach aligns with the African Methodist Episcopal University's commitment to holistic review and providing opportunities, while still ensuring that admitted students meet the necessary academic benchmarks for success. It respects the applicant's right to be evaluated based on their full profile and potential, rather than solely on isolated data points. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on identifying negative patterns without seeking context risks unfairly penalizing the applicant. This fails to acknowledge that academic performance can be influenced by various external factors and does not align with a commitment to equitable evaluation. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate rejection based on superficial indicators overlooks the university's mission to foster growth and development, potentially excluding promising candidates who could thrive with appropriate support. A third incorrect approach that involves making assumptions about the applicant's capabilities without a thorough investigation is ethically unsound and undermines the principles of fair assessment. Professionals in university admissions should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the university's mission and admission criteria. This framework should then involve a systematic and objective evaluation of all available applicant information, including academic records, personal statements, and any supporting documentation. Crucially, it must include a process for investigating any potential red flags or areas of concern by seeking clarification and context from the applicant. The final decision should be based on a holistic assessment of the applicant's potential to succeed and contribute to the university community, adhering to principles of fairness, transparency, and academic integrity. Question 9. The assessment process reveals an applicant's academic transcript shows a significant decline in grades during their final 2 years of secondary education, accompanied by a brief explanation citing personal challenges. The admissions committee is tasked with evaluating this applicant for admission to the African Methodist Episcopal University. Which of the following approaches best reflects a responsible and ethical assessment strategy? Option A. Accepting the applicant based solely on their explanation of personal challenges, assuming these circumstances are sufficient justification for the academic dip. Option B. Immediately rejecting the applicant due to the clear academic decline, as this indicates a lack of preparedness for university-level studies. Option C. Requesting a detailed written statement from the applicant outlining the nature of the personal challenges and seeking supporting documentation, while also reviewing the applicant's extracurricular activities and any standardized test scores for a broader understanding of their capabilities. Option D. Focusing exclusively on the applicant's earlier, stronger academic performance and disregarding the recent decline as an anomaly that does not require further investigation. The correct answer is C. Requesting a detailed written statement from the applicant outlining the nature of the personal challenges and seeking supporting documentation, while also reviewing the applicant's extracurricular activities and any standardized test scores for a broader understanding of their capabilities. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a scenario where an applicant's academic record presents a potential risk to the university's academic integrity and reputation. This is professionally challenging because the admissions committee must balance the university's mission to provide educational opportunities with its responsibility to maintain rigorous academic standards and prevent the admission of individuals who may not be prepared for university-level work or who may have engaged in academic dishonesty. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between genuine academic struggles and deliberate misrepresentation or lack of preparedness. The correct approach involves a thorough, multifaceted review of the applicant's academic history, seeking corroborating evidence and context. This approach aligns with the African Methodist Episcopal University's commitment to fairness and academic excellence. It necessitates looking beyond simple grades to understand the applicant's narrative, potential for growth, and any mitigating circumstances. This aligns with ethical principles of due diligence and fair assessment, ensuring that decisions are based on a comprehensive understanding of the applicant, not just superficial data points. An approach that focuses solely on the applicant's stated reasons for poor performance without independent verification is professionally unsound. This fails to uphold the university's responsibility to ensure the integrity of its student body and academic programs. Risks admitting students who may not meet the required standards, potentially leading to academic failure and a dilution of the university's reputation. Another incorrect approach is to immediately disqualify the applicant based on a single negative indicator without further investigation. This demonstrates a lack of due process and fails to consider the possibility of extenuating circumstances or the applicant's potential for improvement. It is ethically problematic as it may unfairly penalize an individual who could otherwise succeed with appropriate support. A third incorrect approach is to accept the applicant without any further scrutiny, assuming that the applicant's narrative is sufficient. This neglects the university's duty to protect its academic standards and the value of its degrees. It can lead to a compromised learning environment for other students and a diminished perception of the university's academic rigor. Professionals in university admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes a holistic review. This involves gathering all relevant information, critically evaluating its credibility, considering mitigating factors, and making a decision that is both fair to the applicant and protective of the institution's academic mission and reputation. This process should be guided by established university policies and ethical considerations regarding academic integrity and student welfare. Question 10. The assessment process reveals an applicant for the African Methodist Episcopal University's undergraduate program has a transcript showing a significant dip in grades during their final 2 years of high school, followed by a strong upward trend in their most recent academic term. The applicant's personal statement attributes the earlier decline to a family health crisis and their subsequent recovery and renewed focus. Which of the following approaches best reflects a responsible and ethical risk assessment for this applicant? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's entire academic record, considering the provided explanation for the performance dip, evaluating their recent academic improvement, and assessing their overall potential for success at the university. Option B. Automatically deny admission due to the inconsistent academic performance, as it indicates a lack of sustained academic rigor. Option C. Admit the applicant without further scrutiny, prioritizing their compelling personal narrative and stated commitment to overcoming adversity. Option D. Grant conditional admission, requiring the applicant to complete a remedial academic program before commencing regular studies. The correct answer is B. Automatically deny admission due to the inconsistent academic performance, as it indicates a lack of sustained academic rigor. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a scenario where an applicant's academic record presents a potential risk due to a pattern of inconsistent performance. This is professionally challenging because the admissions committee must balance the university's commitment to academic rigor with its mission to provide educational opportunities. A purely punitive approach might exclude deserving candidates who have overcome significant personal challenges, while an overly lenient approach could compromise the academic standards of the institution. Careful judgment is required to identify genuine potential versus a lack of preparedness. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review that seeks to understand the context behind the applicant's academic record. This includes evaluating mitigating circumstances, assessing the applicant's stated motivation for pursuing higher education at this specific institution, and considering any evidence of growth or improvement in their academic journey. This approach aligns with the ethical principles of fairness and equity in admissions, recognizing that a single snapshot of past performance may not fully represent an individual's future capacity. It also implicitly adheres to the spirit of inclusive education, which is often a cornerstone of university missions, including those of institutions like the African Methodist Episcopal University, which historically have served to uplift and empower. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on the numerical grades and GPA, disregarding any explanations or extenuating factors provided by the applicant. This fails to acknowledge the multifaceted nature of academic success and can lead to discriminatory outcomes, particularly for applicants from disadvantaged backgrounds who may have faced systemic barriers. Another incorrect approach is to automatically disqualify any applicant with a GPA below a certain threshold without further investigation. This rigid application of a rule, without considering individual circumstances or potential, is both ethically questionable and professionally unsound, as it misses opportunities to identify promising students who may thrive with the right support. A third incorrect approach would be to grant admission based solely on a compelling personal narrative, without adequately verifying the applicant's academic readiness or potential to succeed in a rigorous university environment. This risks admitting students who are unlikely to complete their studies, which is detrimental to both the student and the university. Professionals in admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes a holistic review. This involves establishing clear, yet flexible, criteria that allow for the consideration of diverse applicant profiles. It requires training to identify and mitigate unconscious biases, and a commitment to understanding the applicant as a whole person, not just a collection of academic metrics. The process should encourage open dialogue within the admissions committee to ensure a balanced and informed decision. Question 11. The assessment process reveals an applicant for the African Methodist Episcopal University's undergraduate program has presented a transcript with a significant dip in grades during their final year of high school, followed by a period of no formal academic activity before reapplying. The applicant's personal statement attributes this to a family health crisis, How should the admissions committee proceed to assess this applicant's risk profile? Option A. Immediately flag the applicant as high risk due to the academic inconsistency and the gap in education, and recommend denial of admission. Option B. Request official documentation to verify the family health crisis and conduct a holistic review of the applicant's overall academic record, extracurricular activities, and personal statement, seeking further clarification if needed. Option C. Accept the applicant based solely on the personal statement's explanation, bypassing any need for verification of the stated circumstances. Option D. Focus solely on the GPA from the most recent academic period, disregarding the earlier performance and the stated reasons for the decline. The correct answer is B. Request official documentation to verify the family health crisis and conduct a holistic review of the applicant's overall academic record, extracurricular activities, and personal statement, seeking further clarification if needed. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a scenario where an applicant's academic history presents potential risks to the university's academic integrity and admission standards. This is professionally challenging because the admissions committee must balance the university's mission to provide educational opportunities with its responsibility to maintain rigorous academic standards and prevent fraudulent admissions. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between genuine academic struggles, extenuating circumstances, and potential misrepresentation. The correct approach involves a thorough, multifaceted risk assessment that prioritizes verification and contextual understanding. This approach is right because it aligns with the ethical imperative of fairness and due diligence in admissions. Specifically, it adheres to the principles of academic integrity by seeking to confirm the authenticity of the applicant's submitted credentials and by considering mitigating factors that might explain academic discrepancies. This demonstrates a commitment to admitting qualified students while upholding the university's reputation. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the applicant's lower grades without further investigation fails to acknowledge potential extenuating circumstances, leading to an unfair assessment. This violates the ethical principle of treating applicants equitably and could result in the rejection of a deserving candidate. Another incorrect approach that immediately assumes academic dishonesty without any evidence is premature and potentially damaging, infringing upon the applicant's right to a fair review and potentially leading to a wrongful rejection. Third incorrect approach that bypasses standard verification procedures to expedite the process undermines the university's commitment to academic rigor and could open the door to fraudulent admissions, thereby compromising the integrity of the entire student body and the university's accreditation. Professionals in university admissions should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the university's admission policies and ethical guidelines. This framework involves systematic data gathering, objective evaluation of evidence, consideration of mitigating factors, and transparent communication with applicants when necessary. The process should be designed to identify and address potential risks while ensuring fairness and adherence to established standards. Question 12. The assessment process reveals an applicant's academic transcript shows a significant dip in performance during their second year of high school, followed by a strong recovery in their final year. What is the most appropriate next step in evaluating this applicant for admission to African Methodist Episcopal University? Option A. Admit the applicant without further investigation, assuming the strong performance in the final year negates any concerns about the earlier dip. Option B. Automatically deny the application due to the inconsistency in academic performance, as it suggests a lack of commitment to academic rigor. Option C. Request additional documentation from the applicant that may explain the academic dip, such as medical records or a personal statement detailing any extenuating circumstances, and review their performance in their final year for evidence of sustained improvement. Option D. Focus solely on the applicant's overall GPA, disregarding the fluctuations, and make a decision based on whether it meets the minimum threshold. The correct answer is C. Request additional documentation from the applicant that may explain the academic dip, such as medical records or a personal statement detailing any extenuating circumstances, and review their performance in their final year for evidence of sustained improvement. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a scenario where an applicant's academic record presents a potential risk due to a pattern of inconsistent performance. This is professionally challenging because the university must balance its commitment to admitting qualified students with the need to maintain academic standards and ensure that admitted students have a reasonable likelihood of success. A hasty decision based on incomplete information could lead to admitting an unprepared student, potentially resulting in academic failure and a drain on university resources, or conversely, rejecting a deserving candidate who may have overcome past academic difficulties. Careful judgment is required to understand the context behind the academic record. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review that seeks to understand the underlying reasons for the applicant's academic fluctuations. This includes looking for mitigating circumstances, such as documented personal challenges, health issues, or significant life events that may have impacted their performance during specific periods. It also involves evaluating the applicant's more recent academic performance, looking for upward trends or strong performance in relevant coursework, and considering any qualitative information provided in their application, such as essays or letters of recommendation, that might shed light on their potential and resilience. This approach aligns with the ethical principle of fairness and the university's mission to provide educational opportunities to those who can benefit from them, while also upholding academic integrity. It is also consistent with the general principles of admissions processes that aim for holistic review, considering more than just raw data points. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on the lowest grades or the overall GPA without investigating the context. This fails to acknowledge that academic performance can be influenced by external factors and overlooks the possibility of growth and improvement. Ethically, this is unfair to the applicant as it penalizes them without understanding their full story. Another incorrect approach would be to automatically disqualify the applicant based on a single poor semester, without considering their performance in other, potentially more relevant, courses or their overall trajectory. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a rigid adherence to a narrow interpretation of academic data, which can lead to arbitrary decisions. A further incorrect approach would be to admit the applicant without any further inquiry, assuming that any academic inconsistencies are irrelevant. This neglects the university's responsibility to ensure a reasonable probability of student success, and could lead to admitting students who are not adequately prepared for the rigor of university-level study, potentially impacting the academic environment for all students. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured, multifaceted review. This begins with identifying potential risks or anomalies in the application data. Next, it requires gathering additional information or context to understand these anomalies. This might involve reviewing supporting documents, seeking clarification from the applicant if permissible, or consulting with admissions counselors who have experience in evaluating diverse academic backgrounds. The decision should then be made based on a holistic assessment of the applicant's potential for success, considering academic preparedness, personal attributes, and any evidence of resilience or growth, all within the framework of the university's admission policies and ethical obligations. Question 13. The assessment process reveals that an applicant for the School of Theology program has previously been found responsible for plagiarism in a general education course during their undergraduate studies at another institution. The applicant has disclosed this incident and provided a brief explanation of their remorse and understanding of academic honesty. What is the most appropriate next step for the admissions committee? Option A. Immediately deny the application due to the prior academic misconduct, regardless of the program or circumstances. Option B. Accept the application without further consideration, assuming the past incident is not relevant to theological studies. Option C. Request a formal apology letter from the applicant and then proceed with a standard review without further investigation into the incident. Option D. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's explanation, the nature of the plagiarism, and the university's policies on academic integrity to determine suitability for admission. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's explanation, the nature of the plagiarism, and the university's policies on academic integrity to determine suitability for admission. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a scenario where an applicant's past academic misconduct, though not directly related to the specific program they are applying for at African Methodist Episcopal University, presents a potential risk. This situation is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with its mission to provide educational opportunities. A careful judgment is needed to determine if past behavior, even if not identical to current program requirements, indicates a pattern that could compromise the university's standards or the applicant's future success. The correct approach involves a thorough, individualized review of the applicant's past misconduct. This means understanding the nature of the infraction, the applicant's response and any remediation undertaken, and the time elapsed since the incident. This approach aligns with the ethical principles of fairness and due process, ensuring that applicants are evaluated based on their present suitability and potential, rather than solely on past mistakes, provided those mistakes have been addressed. It also upholds the university's responsibility to maintain academic standards by considering all relevant information. An incorrect approach would be to automatically reject the applicant based solely on the existence of past academic misconduct, regardless of its severity, context, or the applicant's subsequent actions. This fails to acknowledge the possibility of growth and learning, and it can be seen as overly punitive and lacking in individualized assessment, potentially violating principles of equity. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the disclosed misconduct entirely, treating it as irrelevant. This would be a failure to uphold the university's duty to ensure academic integrity and could expose the institution to reputational risk if the applicant were to reoffend. A third incorrect approach would be to accept the applicant without any further inquiry or consideration of the misconduct, assuming it poses no future risk. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to proactively assess potential risks to the academic environment. Professionals in university admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes a holistic review. This involves gathering all relevant information, assessing its significance in the context of the university's values and standards, and making a reasoned judgment. This process should be guided by established university policies on admissions and academic integrity, ensuring consistency and fairness while allowing for flexibility in individual cases. Question 14. The assessment process reveals an applicant's academic transcript shows a significant drop in grades during their final year of secondary education, followed by an explanation citing personal family challenges. What is the most appropriate next step in assessing this applicant's risk profile for admission to African Methodist Episcopal University? Option A. Immediately deny the application due to the significant academic performance decline, as it indicates a potential lack of academic rigor. Option B. Accept the applicant's explanation at face value and proceed with the admission decision without further inquiry to expedite the process. Option C. Focus solely on the applicant's standardized test scores, disregarding the transcript and explanation as less critical indicators. Option D. Request further documentation or a personal interview to understand the context of the academic performance decline and the applicant's current academic readiness. Correct answer is D. Request further documentation or a personal interview to understand the context of the academic performance decline and the applicant's current academic readiness. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a scenario where an applicant's academic history presents potential risks to the university's academic integrity and admission standards. This situation is professionally challenging because it requires a delicate balance between fairness to the applicant and the university's responsibility to maintain its reputation and the value of its degrees. A thorough risk assessment is crucial to identify potential issues without making premature judgments. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of the applicant's academic records, seeking clarification on any discrepancies or unusual patterns, and evaluating the context of their past academic performance. This aligns with the African Methodist Episcopal University's commitment to admitting qualified students while upholding ethical admission practices. Specifically, this approach respects the applicant's right to be assessed fairly and allows the university to gather sufficient information to make an informed decision, thereby adhering to principles of due process and academic governance. It avoids assumptions and focuses on evidence-based evaluation. An incorrect approach that involves immediate rejection based on a superficial review of the academic history fails to uphold the principle of fair assessment. It bypasses the opportunity to understand mitigating circumstances or potential errors, which could lead to an unjust outcome and potentially violate the university's own admission policies if they allow for consideration of extenuating factors. Another incorrect approach which is to overlook potential red flags in the academic record to meet admission quotas or diversity targets, compromises academic integrity. This approach prioritizes expediency or other institutional goals over the fundamental requirement of admitting students who meet the academic standards necessary for success at the university. It risks admitting students who may struggle academically, potentially leading to higher attrition rates and devaluing the degrees awarded. A further incorrect approach, such as accepting the applicant's explanation without independent verification or further investigation, can also be problematic. While it shows a degree of trust, it fails to adequately assess the risk. The university has a duty to ensure the accuracy of information presented in applications, and an unverified explanation might mask underlying issues that could impact the applicant's future academic performance or the integrity of the admissions process. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This framework typically includes identifying potential risks, e.g., academic dishonesty, poor academic preparedness, gathering relevant information, e.g., transcripts, letters of recommendation, applicant statements, evaluating the likelihood and impact of identified risks, and developing mitigation strategies or making informed decisions based on the assessment. Transparency and adherence to established university policies are paramount throughout this process. Question 15. Process analysis reveals that the African Methodist Episcopal University's entrance examination, while designed to assess academic readiness, may inadvertently present challenges for applicants from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds due to the nature of some question contexts. What is the most appropriate risk assessment approach to ensure fairness and academic integrity? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive review of the examination content and administration procedures to identify and address any potential biases that could disadvantage specific demographic groups, ensuring alignment with principles of equitable assessment. Option B. Focus on increasing the number of applicants from underrepresented groups by relaxing certain assessment criteria to meet diversity targets. Option C. Prioritize the recruitment of applicants from specific demographic groups identified as having lower historical enrollment rates, regardless of their performance on the entrance examination. Option D. Rely on informal feedback from admissions officers and anecdotal evidence to make adjustments to the examination process. Correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive review of the examination content and administration procedures to identify and address any potential biases that could disadvantage specific demographic groups, ensuring alignment with principles of equitable assessment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between an institution's need to attract diverse talent and the ethical imperative to ensure all applicants are assessed fairly and without prejudice. The university entrance exam is a critical gatekeeping mechanism, and any perceived bias in its design or administration can undermine its validity and the institution's reputation. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can inadvertently lead to a relaxation of rigorous assessment standards, creating a risk of admitting unqualified candidates or, conversely, unfairly excluding deserving ones. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of the examination's content and administration to identify potential biases that could disadvantage specific demographic groups. This aligns with the ethical principles of fairness and equity in education, which are fundamental to the mission of any academic institution, including the African Methodist Episcopal University. Regulatory frameworks governing higher education entrance examinations, while not explicitly detailed for this specific exam in the prompt, generally emphasize the need for standardized, objective, and non-discriminatory assessment practices. A thorough risk assessment, as described in the correct approach, proactively seeks to uphold these principles by scrutinizing the exam for any elements that might inadvertently create barriers for certain applicants, thereby ensuring a more equitable selection process. Incorrect approach is analysis, focusing solely on increasing the number of applicants without addressing the quality or fairness of the assessment process is an ethically unsound approach. This prioritizes quantity over the integrity of the selection process and could lead to the admission of students who are not adequately prepared for university-level studies, ultimately harming both the students and the institution. Prioritizing the recruitment of applicants from specific demographic groups, even with the intention of promoting diversity, can lead to discriminatory practices if not carefully managed. Without a robust assessment of their academic readiness, such a focus risks admitting students based on factors other than merit, which can undermine the academic standards of the university and create a perception of unfairness among other applicants. Relying on anecdotal evidence or informal feedback from admissions staff to gauge the fairness of the exam is insufficient and unprofessional. Such methods lack the rigor and objectivity required for a proper risk assessment and can be influenced by personal biases, leading to an inaccurate understanding of potential issues. A systematic and data-driven approach is essential for identifying and mitigating risks effectively. Professional reasoning. Professionals tasked with overseeing university entrance examinations must adopt a proactive and systematic approach to risk management. This involves a continuous cycle of identification, assessment, and mitigation of potential risks. When faced with a scenario like this, the decision-making process should involve 1. Understanding the core mission and values of the institution, particularly its commitment to equitable access and academic excellence. 2. Consulting relevant institutional policies and any applicable external guidelines or best practices for higher education admissions and examinations. 3. Conducting a thorough and objective analysis of the examination process, from question design to administration and scoring. 4. Seeking diverse perspectives and data to inform the assessment of potential biases. 5. Developing and implementing strategies to mitigate identified risks, ensuring that any changes to the examination process are fair, transparent, and aligned with the institution's goals. 6. Regularly reviewing the effectiveness of implemented mitigation strategies. Question 16. The performance metrics show a significant increase in student retention rates over the past 2 academic years, but a concurrent decline in the average GPA of graduating students. What is the most prudent approach to assessing the implications of these trends for the university's strategic planning and reputation? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive review of academic support services, curriculum relevance, and faculty engagement to understand the factors contributing to both the retention and GPA trends, and to identify areas for strategic improvement. Option B. Focus on promoting the positive retention metric in university communication to highlight institutional success and address the GPA decline by implementing a standardized, less rigorous grading policy across all departments. Option C. Immediately revise the performance metrics to exclude GPA as a key indicator and emphasize other positive outcomes, such as increased enrollment numbers. Option D. Attribute the retention increase solely to improved student welfare initiatives and the GPA decline to external economic pressures affecting student study habits, without further internal investigation. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive review of academic support services, curriculum relevance, and faculty engagement to understand the factors contributing to both the retention and GPA trends, and to identify areas for strategic improvement. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's strategic goals with the ethical imperative of accurate and transparent reporting. The performance metrics as presented may not fully reflect the reality of student outcomes or resource allocation, potentially leading to misinformed decisions by stakeholders, including prospective students, donors, and governing bodies. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any analysis or action taken is grounded in a comprehensive understanding of the data and its implications, adhering to principles of academic integrity and responsible stewardship of university resources. The correct approach involves a thorough, multifaceted risk assessment that goes beyond surface-level metrics. This includes investigating the underlying data collection processes, identifying potential biases or limitations in the metrics themselves, and considering qualitative factors that might not be captured by quantitative data. This approach aligns with the ethical obligations of educational institutions to maintain transparency and accountability. Specifically, it reflects a commitment to the principles of good governance and responsible management, ensuring that decisions are based on a realistic and complete picture of the university's performance, thereby safeguarding its reputation and its mission. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate improvements to the reported metrics without understanding the root causes of any discrepancies would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to superficial changes that do not address underlying issues, potentially masking systemic problems and misrepresenting the university's true standing. Such an approach would violate ethical principles of honesty and integrity in reporting. Another incorrect approach that involves selectively highlighting positive metrics while downplaying or ignoring negative ones would constitute a failure of transparency and could mislead stakeholders. This selective presentation of data is ethically unsound and undermines trust. A further incorrect approach that involves attributing performance solely to external factors without internal analysis would be a failure of due diligence and accountability. While external factors can influence performance, a responsible assessment requires an examination of internal strategies, resource allocation, and operational effectiveness. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach to risk assessment. This begins with clearly defining the objectives of the assessment and identifying all relevant stakeholders. Next, potential risks associated with the performance metrics should be identified, considering both quantitative and qualitative aspects. This involves scrutinizing data sources, methodologies, and potential biases. Subsequently, the likelihood and impact of each identified risk should be evaluated. Based on this evaluation, appropriate mitigation strategies should be developed and implemented. Finally, the effectiveness of these strategies should be monitored and reviewed regularly, ensuring continuous improvement and adherence to ethical standards. Question 17. The audit findings indicate discrepancies in the allocation of certain departmental funds and suggest a lack of robust internal controls over petty cash disbursements within the African Methodist Episcopal University. What is the most appropriate next step for the university's leadership? Option A. Instruct the internal audit department to conduct a more in-depth review of all departmental budgets to identify further potential issues, without initially communicating the current findings externally. Option B. Issue a public statement acknowledging that minor administrative issues were identified and are being addressed internally, without providing specific details of the findings. Option C. Focus solely on implementing immediate corrective measures within the affected departments to rectify the discrepancies and strengthen controls, deferring any external communication until all issues are fully resolved. Option D. Immediately convene a meeting with the audit committee and relevant department heads to discuss the findings, develop a corrective action plan, and establish a timeline for implementation, while preparing a transparent communication strategy for key stakeholders. The correct answer is D. Immediately convene a meeting with the audit committee and relevant department heads to discuss the findings, develop a corrective action plan, and establish a timeline for implementation, while preparing a transparent communication strategy for key stakeholders. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for transparency and accountability with the potential for reputational damage and the protection of sensitive institutional information. The university, as a nonprofit educational institution, operates under specific ethical guidelines and potentially regulatory frameworks governing its financial and operational integrity. The audit findings, if not addressed appropriately, could undermine stakeholder confidence and lead to further scrutiny. The correct approach involves a proactive and transparent communication strategy that acknowledges the findings, outlines corrective actions, and engages relevant stakeholders. This aligns with principles of good governance and ethical stewardship expected of educational institutions. Specifically, it demonstrates a commitment to continuous improvement and accountability, which are crucial for maintaining trust with students, faculty, donors, and governing bodies. The African Methodist Episcopal University, like many institutions, is expected to uphold high standards of integrity in its operations. An approach that focuses solely on internal remediation, without external communication risks appearing evasive or dismissive of the audit's significance. This could lead to a perception of a lack of transparency and accountability, potentially damaging the university's reputation and its relationships with its constituents. Fails to address the broader need for stakeholder assurance. Another incorrect approach, which involves downplaying or ignoring the audit findings, is ethically unsound and professionally negligent. This not only violates principles of honesty and integrity, but also fails to address the root causes of the issues identified, potentially leading to more significant problems in the future. It also neglects the duty to inform stakeholders about material issues affecting the institution. A third incorrect approach, which involves immediately publicizing all details of the audit findings without proper context or a clear communication plan, could lead to misinterpretation, unnecessary panic, and reputational harm. While transparency is important, it must be managed strategically to ensure accurate understanding and to avoid unintended negative consequences. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a thorough review of the audit findings, consultation with legal and communications counsel, development of a clear and honest communication strategy, and the implementation of robust corrective actions. The focus should be on demonstrating a commitment to addressing the issues identified while protecting the institution's long-term interests and reputation. Question 18. Upon reviewing the admissions file of a prospective student for the African Methodist Episcopal University, which approach to assessing potential risks and suitability for academic success best aligns with ethical admissions practices and the university's mission? Option A. A determination of admission based predominantly on the applicant's demonstrated financial need and ability to articulate their financial situation. Option B. A comprehensive risk assessment that considers academic history, extracurricular activities, personal essays, letters of recommendation, and any disclosed challenges or extenuating circumstances. Option C. A primary focus on the applicant's current GPA and standardized test scores as the most objective indicators of academic readiness. Option D. An evaluation heavily weighted towards the applicant's perceived alignment with the university's social culture and existing student body demographics. The correct answer is B. A comprehensive risk assessment that considers academic history, extracurricular activities, personal essays, letters of recommendation, and any disclosed challenges or extenuating circumstances. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of risk assessment principles within the context of university admissions, specifically for the African Methodist Episcopal University. The challenge lies in identifying the most appropriate method to evaluate potential risks associated with an applicant's profile, ensuring fairness, adherence to institutional policies, and the ethical consideration of diverse applicant backgrounds. Careful judgment is required to balance the need for a robust assessment with the imperative to avoid discriminatory practices or undue bias. The correct approach involves a comprehensive and multifaceted risk assessment that considers a broad spectrum of factors beyond immediate academic performance. This approach is right because it aligns with best practices in admissions, which advocate for a holistic review. Such a review acknowledges that an applicant's potential for success is influenced by various elements, including their background, experiences, and demonstrated resilience. This aligns with the ethical imperative to provide equitable opportunities and to recognize the value of diverse perspectives within the university community. Regulatory frameworks for university admissions, while not explicitly detailed for this specific exam's jurisdiction, generally emphasize fairness, non-discrimination, and the selection of candidates most likely to thrive and contribute to the academic environment. A comprehensive assessment, therefore, is ethically and professionally sound. An approach that focuses solely on immediate academic metrics, such as GPA and standardized test scores, is incorrect because it fails to capture the full potential of an applicant and may inadvertently disadvantage individuals from less privileged backgrounds or those who have faced significant obstacles. This approach represents a narrow and potentially biased evaluation, neglecting the qualitative aspects of an applicant's profile that are crucial for success in a university setting. It risks overlooking promising candidates who may excel with appropriate support. An approach that prioritizes an applicant's perceived fit based on subjective criteria or personal connections is also incorrect. This is ethically problematic as it introduces bias and can lead to unfair selection processes, undermining the principles of meritocracy and equal opportunity. Such an approach can also be discriminatory, favoring certain demographics or social groups over others, which is contrary to the ethical standards expected of educational institutions. An approach that relies heavily on the applicant's ability to articulate their financial need as the primary determinant of risk is incorrect. While financial considerations are a part of the overall university operational risk and student support, they should not be the sole or primary factor in assessing an applicant's academic or personal suitability for admission. This approach risks conflating financial status with academic potential and can lead to the exclusion of deserving candidates who may require financial assistance but possess strong academic and personal attributes. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a commitment to a holistic review. This means considering all relevant aspects of an applicant's profile, including academic achievements, extracurricular involvement, personal essays, letters of recommendation, and any mitigating circumstances. It requires a conscious effort to identify and mitigate personal biases, and to apply institutional policies consistently and fairly. Professionals should also be aware of and adhere to any specific guidelines or regulations governing university admissions within their jurisdiction, ensuring that the assessment process is both rigorous and equitable. Question 19. Cost-benefit analysis shows a significant potential for increased student enrollment and revenue from a proposed new online degree program. However, the university's IT infrastructure is aging, and there are concerns about data security and the capacity to support a large influx of remote learners. Which approach best balances the potential benefits with the inherent risks for the African Methodist Episcopal University? Option A. Focus solely on the positive financial projections from the cost-benefit analysis and allocate resources to marketing the new program, assuming IT and security challenges can be managed with minimal additional investment. Option B. Decline the new online degree program due to the identified IT infrastructure and data security concerns, even though the cost-benefit analysis indicates potential financial gains. Option C. Implement the new online degree program immediately to capitalize on the potential revenue, addressing any IT or security issues reactively as they arise. Option D. Proceed with the new online degree program, prioritizing a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies, analyzes, and evaluates potential operational, technical, and security risks, and develops mitigation strategies before full implementation. The correct answer is D. Proceed with the new online degree program, prioritizing a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies, analyzes, and evaluates potential operational, technical, and security risks, and develops mitigation strategies before full implementation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the potential benefits of a new initiative against its associated risks and costs, all within the specific regulatory and ethical framework governing the African Methodist Episcopal University, AMU. The challenge lies in ensuring that any decision made is not only financially sound, but also aligns with AMU mission, values, and any applicable accreditation standards or internal policies. A superficial cost-benefit analysis that overlooks non-quantifiable factors like reputational impact or ethical considerations would be professionally deficient. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that integrates the findings of the cost-benefit analysis with a thorough evaluation of potential risks. This means identifying, analyzing, and evaluating risks across various domains: financial, operational, reputational, and ethical. By considering these risks in conjunction with the potential benefits and costs, decision-makers can make a more informed and responsible choice that safeguards the university's interests and upholds its commitments. This aligns with principles of good governance and prudent management expected of educational institutions, ensuring that decisions are not solely driven by immediate financial gains, but also by long-term sustainability and ethical integrity. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that focuses solely on the quantifiable financial benefits identified in the cost-benefit analysis, without adequately assessing the associated risks, is professionally unacceptable. This failure to consider potential negative outcomes, such as reputational damage or operational disruptions, can lead to significant unforeseen costs and undermine the university's standing. An approach that prioritizes mitigating all identified risks to the absolute lowest level, regardless of the cost or the potential benefits of the initiative, is also professionally flawed. This can lead to excessive caution, stifling innovation, and preventing the university from pursuing valuable opportunities that could enhance its educational offerings or community engagement. It fails to strike a balance between risk management and strategic advancement. An approach that relies exclusively on anecdotal evidence or personal opinions regarding the initiative's success, bypassing a structured risk assessment and the cost-benefit analysis, is professionally unsound. This disregard for systematic evaluation and data-driven decision-making can lead to biased judgments and decisions that are not in the best interest of the university or its stakeholders. Professional reasoning. Professionals at AMU should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the initiative's objectives. This should be followed by a robust cost-benefit analysis that considers both tangible and intangible factors. Crucially, this analysis must be complemented by a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies, analyzes, and evaluates potential risks. The final decision should be based on a holistic evaluation of the potential benefits, costs, and risks, ensuring alignment with AMU mission, values, and regulatory obligations. This iterative process of analysis, evaluation, and informed decision-making is essential for responsible stewardship. Question 20. The assessment process reveals that a prospective student, during their interview, expressed significant anxiety about academic performance and made several comments suggesting a lack of confidence in their ability to succeed at the university level, alongside a history of academic challenges in previous institutions. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the African Methodist Episcopal University's commitment to holistic student development and fair admission practices? Option A. Request further documentation from previous institutions detailing specific learning disabilities without exploring the student's potential for growth or support. Option B. Proceed with admission without any further consideration, assuming the student will overcome their challenges independently. Option C. Immediately deny admission due to the expressed anxieties and academic history, prioritizing the perceived risk to academic standards. Option D. Offer admission contingent upon the student engaging with the university's academic support services and counseling center upon enrollment, with a clear plan for monitoring their progress. The correct answer is C. Immediately deny admission due to the expressed anxieties and academic history, prioritizing the perceived risk to academic standards. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a scenario where a prospective student exhibits characteristics that might indicate a potential risk to the university community or their own academic success. This is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's duty of care and its commitment to providing an inclusive educational environment with the need to uphold academic standards and ensure the safety and well-being of all students and staff. A careful, nuanced judgment is required, avoiding hasty decisions based on incomplete information or prejudice. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective, and documented evaluation of the identified risks. This means gathering all relevant information, considering the context of the student's behavior or circumstances, and applying established university policies and admission criteria fairly. The university's regulatory framework, likely encompassing admissions policies, student conduct codes, and potentially disability support services, would guide this process. Ethical considerations demand that the student be treated with respect, their rights protected, and that any decision be based on evidence rather than assumptions. This approach ensures compliance with institutional policies designed to maintain a safe and academically rigorous environment while upholding principles of fairness and due process. An incorrect approach that relies on immediate exclusion based on initial impressions or stereotypes would be ethically and regulatorily unsound. Such an approach fails to adhere to the university's established procedures for assessing applicants, potentially leading to discriminatory practices and a violation of the student's right to a fair evaluation. Another incorrect approach might involve ignoring the identified risks altogether, which would be a failure of the university's duty of care and could jeopardize the safety and academic integrity of the institution. A third incorrect approach could be to apply a one-size-fits-all solution without considering the specific circumstances of the individual, which would be both unfair and likely inconsistent with the university's commitment to supporting diverse student needs. Professionals in university admissions and student affairs should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes evidence-based assessment, adherence to established policies and procedures, and ethical considerations. This involves a systematic review of all available information, consultation with relevant departments, e.g., counseling services, academic advising, if appropriate and with the applicant's consent, and a clear, documented rationale for any decision made. The process should be transparent and allow for avenues of appeal if necessary, ensuring fairness and due process for all applicants.